President Cyril Ramaphosa has been testifying for the first time at the state capture inquiry today. Our senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is tracking developments for us. Sipa, we know that the president is about to exit, but let's talk about what was discussed after 2 o'clock when you came back from lunch, and that is the deployment committee, his role in it, and how people are appointed to SOEs.
Indeed, that has featured strongly here, Shahan. I can tell you that after lunch, that was the focus, the president of the ANC focusing on that, really, the issue of the deployment committee. Let me see. I see here the ANC delegation making its way out of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry here. Earlier on, the president said he was going to speak to us. Let's see if we can get a word. Mr. President, you said we can try now that you are done. Please, just a second, Mr. President. How are you feeling your first day?
I'm feeling good, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. President. Oh, well, Thulasizwe, well, initially the president had said he was going to speak to us after finishing his first day, but it seems as if he's not honoring that commitment that he made earlier on to us. Basically, he has concluded his testimony today. He is coming back tomorrow. Today was just day one, which he spent focusing on ANC processes, internal processes, how they work, the resolutions of the party, of the organization. Let me tell you why the issue of deployment committee was very central and cadre deployment policy, because at the center of state capture is the issue of how some of the state-owned entities were captured by members deployed to the boards of those entities, as well as executive management in terms of people who served in various, businesses and companies belonging to the state, whether you're talking about ESCOM, whether you're talking about... Let's see if we can get a comment from the chairperson of the ANC. Mkwati, just a quick one. What do you make of your president's submission?
I was here for 2 days last week.
Yeah, but as the chairperson of the ANC, what do you make of what transpired today?
I was here for 2 days last week.
Are you coming back to be cross-examined?
I'm coming back tomorrow.
Well, yeah, Shahan, it's a scramble here. We are trying to get some comment from some of the leaders of the ANC, because the president of the ANC has been flanked by senior members of the organization, including the chairperson of the party, that is Gwere Mantashe, who has had his time with the Zondo Commission testifying here. Interestingly, President Cyril Ramaphosa of the ANC wrapped up today focusing on issues related to Bosasa and how that controversial company funded the ANC, and the Deputy Chief Justice, who is the chairperson of this commission, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, asking the president of the ANC how did the party continue to accept money and donations from a company that was flagged in the media for being involved in questionable dealings and continuing to receive government contracts. Well, the president of the ANC conceding that yes, it did happen, it shouldn't have happened, the ANC should have picked it up, but it didn't pick up. He says now the point will be how they correct that. So tomorrow we expect that he will come back and pick up from where the commission left off. But some people who are his critics will say, well, today was very easy for him. He did not face too many tough questions. I think things started getting tougher or heated, if we can use that, which is not really heated, towards the end of today when that question about Bosasa came. But throughout the day, it was about how the ANC worked, the deployment committee, the cadre deployment policy, all of that in trying to fit in to how the state institutions were captured using those deployees of the governing party or those who may have been favored by the governing party to be deployed to critical state-owned entities. Shahan.
All right, stand by for us, Siphamandla. We can go to ANC anchor Thulasizwe Simelane, who is also inside. So, Thulas, let's talk about the Deputy Chief Justice, because we've just heard from Siphamandla for highlights on what was said by the President. But the Deputy Chief Justice saying that it was good for the ANC to acknowledge its wrongdoing, but it must be backed up by accountability.
So if you were to take the analogy, Shahan, of a fireplace fire from coal, and sort of you're trying to get this fire burning but it's just taking so long to get burning, and you end up needing to use a poker to sort of, move the coals around to get them to start burning really in essence. It felt a little bit like that at various points during the day today, in that, look, if you are a policy boffin and you are a policy head, perhaps you were excited by all this talk of the ANC's deployment policy and how it works where the rubber meets the road, to quote a phrase that the president used today. But in terms of if you are looking for answers to specific questions, my goodness, you didn't get much by way of that today. There seems to me, Shahan, to have been a pattern to President Ramaphosa's day one. Acknowledgement was a key part of it. So if there's a suggestion that something went wrong with the deployment policy, he would quickly acknowledge it and say there were instances where people's names didn't go via the deployment policy, using the word mea culpa, that even he was guilty of that at some point, and saying that even former President Jacob Zuma, there would be instances where Ramaphosa, as head of the deployment policy, deployment committee of the ANC, would go to former President Jacob Zuma and say, Mr. President, in this instance, you really should have taken this through the deployment policy. So that acknowledgement, the acknowledgement that issues of patronage were at play and abhorrent in as far as the appointment of people is concerned, that came through. But if you're looking for specifics, what were you acknowledging? It didn't come in that level of detail. This prompted the Deputy Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, to actually try and use a poker to take my analogy a step further, to try and get this coal burning. Take a listen to how he prodded President Cyril Ramaphosa. To be more specific, what exactly are you saying mea culpa for? What are you acknowledging?
Well, talking about the fact that the ANC acknowledges that there were certain shortcomings, there were certain things that it might not have done properly and so on. I think that is quite important, that acknowledgement. But I would like you, maybe before you finish today or even tomorrow, I would like you to identify the actual areas where you say, as a party, we have done our homework. We think this is where we didn't do what we were supposed to do properly. This is where we did something we shouldn't have done. So we identify exactly areas where, as a party, you say, here we didn't do things the way we should have, and we acknowledge. So why that is important is because while an acknowledgement is good and it should be given its proper weight, it's even better if one knows what you are talking about. Because when one knows what the party is talking about and says this is where we accept we went wrong, then one can look at what should be put in place for the future so that there is no repeat.
So tell us, what's the president saying about the ANC being held to account for any corruption and wrongdoing?
Well, Shahan, basically he is acknowledging that in some instances people were appointed to positions perhaps along the lines of the ANC's deployment policy, but those people were not fit for purpose. So the whole idea that people who are appointed should be fit for purpose in terms of serving in government, he is acknowledging that actually there are many instances where that was not necessarily the case. And therefore, in that pattern of acknowledging what has happened and then committing to saying that things will be slightly different. I mean, I recall at some point he was asked, why should people believe you now, Mr. President? What's different now, being asked by the evidence leader, Paul Pretorius, and basically doing that whole pattern again of saying since the 54th National Conference in 2017, well, the difference now is that we are moving from theory of talking about to putting people through the eye of the needle before we appoint them to actually taking that into practice. So merit being a key thing. That's at least according to President Ramaphosa, saying fairness, equity, transparency and openness, and ensuring that you have a very good process in appointing people. So there's acknowledgement, then there's commitment that things will change. It's a theme. You can watch it again if you want. It is a theme that runs through his testimony. So much so, Shahan, there was a specific example that he was asked to address where the question arose about whether when the deployment committee says this person should be appointed, is that a recommendation or are you compelled as an official in government to then appoint that particular person? This was the case in the Amatole district municipality where basically the regional executive committee gave word that a person should be appointed. At least there, Shahan, we got a sense of something specific in terms of the thinking of President Ramaphosa as this being one of those cases where actually the deployment policy failed. It didn't work the way it should have. Take a listen to that example.
I would, with respect, however, say that maybe I should be able to do that when I conclude my appearance before you forever. Because there comes a day when I will appear before you and never have to do so again.
And you will not want to ever appear again.
No, I never would want to. So I would say maybe when I end my evidence before you as President of the Republic.
All right, Thulas, I know you were talking about the Amatole municipality. We can play that sound clip now, so let's listen into that.
It's so relevant in addressing the issues we're dealing with about getting a person who's fit for purpose, where a person who was fit for purpose, who even in the interview process clearly demonstrated that they know the job. And when the other one was interviewed, they recognized his lack of capacity, but still went ahead and appointed him. And then they said, we recognize it, but we believe that this person will really improve going forward, without adding other elements. And I would put that in a distinct way with say, when we bring in young people, we are saying we need to bring young people in, even without experience, because we need to prepare them to play a role going forward, and then we capacitate them. So that is separate. But in this case, the person who was finally selected just did not have the wherewithal, and they disregarded the person who was more qualified. They then were unhappy and took the matter to court, and the court said that person who had been rejected should then be appointed.